Welcome back to my YouTube video tutorial, guys. Today is, in this video tutorial, it's going to be the continuation of the CRUD application in KnockoutJS that we are working on, basic CRUD application. So it's going to be the basically continuation of that. Today we'll mainly talk about HTML and JavaScript because in the previous video tutorial, if you guys have been following, we mainly work on the server side, mainly the web API of ASP.NET MVC. Today, starting from today, what I have done is, what we'll be doing is writing a lot of JavaScript code and how to use KnockoutJS to communicate to backend server. Of course, I'll be using the JQuery AJAX to talk to get the data, JSON data from the server. Okay, so let's see what I have done so far. I created a couple of files here. I had a folder called HTML. Into it, I added add_degree.html. That HTML is used to save the degree information. And there is a degree. This degree information is basically public-facing website. That file. So right now, I'm strictly using Okay, even before that, let me show you how does this HTML looks like right now. So this is our HTML portion. So here is this add degree, add area of study. These are like admin portion of the functionality, and this one is public facing site. That's why the themes are different. To provide this different kind of theme, what I have done is basically into the content folder, I have Bootstrap here, but I have two Bootstrap, one for the admin, as you can see here, and the other one is for the public. And into those HTML pages, I'm using two different files. That's why the themes are different, which kind of makes sense, like you don't want to provide that fancy type of feature for the admin, maybe, or maybe your public website you would like to look much better. Okay, anyways, that's and just to give a credit, basically I'm using this website called Bootstrap Watch because they have some pre-open source theme that you can use whatever you like. And of course, you want really fancy looking website, then they provide then you have to buy those themes, that Bootstrap theme. Otherwise, very simple one you can use. They are open source. Okay, that is that. So now I have the add degree. So like I said, this is all navigation is very simple Bootstrap navigation. Practically, I just grabbed this code from the Bootstrap websites and just added my navigation here. Okay, so nothing interesting in there. And this portion of this is where our bulk of here, this piece is starting from here. All this markup is there. So basically, I need basically when the user enters data, and our data user enters, let's say in this case enters a degree, and then the degree is saved successfully into backend database. It's a good idea to provide feedback to the user. To display that, what I have done is, like, I have a degree, I have this panel here, container, and then this container contains span tag with, hey, degree is added successfully. So at the same time, and then I have that's just the Bootstrap code here. Please enter a degree, and then basically an input type text into with the user, and then user would enter the degree, and then I have a button here just to add degree. We don't have any click event or any kind of event setup yet. That's what we will be doing. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and close all but this is one we'll be using. And then also corresponding to this HTML page, I have this JavaScript file here. Right now it's empty. That's where we'll be writing our code. Before I start in any library, it's a good idea. What I do, especially in Visual Studio, I can drag this one into the surface here so that I get the intelligence feature. So this all gonna happen. Let's make sure the DOM is loaded before anything else. This is just a plain jQuery. Make sure our DOM has been completely loaded. And then inside here, I'm going to define our view model. The way I'm define view model is something like define iffy here, and this guy takes JQuery as input parameter, and then right away we can come in here and then invoke this function. Okay, this is our view model. And once that, of course, you know, this is the private here, so I have to do something inside here. Let's define VM add degree. Add degree is an empty JavaScript literal object here, and then we need to define a couple of observable property. So basically, first thing we need, let's go ahead and define a property called name. That will be the degree name that user will be entering. Okay, so it will be knockout is observable property. Just to provide the basic information about observable, this provide the two-directional, bidirectional communication between the view and the model. That's why, you know, these a lot of JavaScript libraries is very useful. They provide a lot of binding, so we don't have to write huge amount of JavaScript code. Even like with jQuery, we had to write a lot of code, you know, binding code back and forth. Okay, that is that. And then also I want to say is successful summation. Is successful submit also observable? By default, I'm going to set it to true. Set it to false here. And let's define another property for the validation is name is valid degree entered. This name of the property, I'm just coming in fly, so so you can change whatever name you like, you know, just you don't have to. So I'm talking and writing the code, whatever property I feel like at that moment. So it's valid by default. Let's say it is. I'm assuming it's the degree that the user gonna enter something. But if they do not enter, then we're gonna display, hey, you have to enter before you submit the button. Okay, this is gonna be our view model. So of course, you know, this is a private to this VM, so we have to return this. So we're gonna return object, and I'm gonna say VM add degree equals to VM add degree. Okay, so once our view model is defined into JavaScript, the last thing we have to type how to tie up with the KnockoutJS. So Knockout provide a couple of methods. So we're going to say, hey Knockout, use the apply binding, and it asks for hey, tell me the view model that you want me to tie up with. So I'm going to say, all right, this is going to be VM is my view model. Okay, this is all we have to do in our JavaScript. So this reference right here, for now while I'm developing, it is okay to leave there because it provides the intelligence. But once our implementation is complete, we are ready to push our code into any environment. Then we will get rid of that one. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go here, and we have a reference to that JavaScript library. So now we can start. We should start using this one. Very first thing we're going to say, we're going to use this visible. These are the default, the bindings provided by the KnockoutJS. One of that binding is visible. So this one we are saying, hey, this is our view models. Our view model contains a property called a successful message. If that message is set to true, then I would like to display this text. I mean, not that text, but idea is basically anything inside this container. I want it to be visible when the message is set to true. Otherwise, it should be set to false. That is the idea. Let's run our code. Okay. By default, I don't want this to be visible. For some reason, it is visible. That means we must have some sort of we should have some sort of issue here, right? So let's always, I prefer to develop in the Chrome browser because I like their developer tools really better. So it is telling us hey. So it is telling this message is the successful message is not a function. So let's see why it is saying that. We don't have even that property called is successful submit in our view model. It is called is successful submit, but looks like we have a non-existing. But I prefer this name better. Go ahead and change that property. Now that does exist. Okay, that's really good. So we don't see that it is successfully submitted message anymore. It is good. That means we don't want to display that. And we also don't want to display this validation right here. This validation is strictly the markup is all Bootstrap validation here. So idea is we want this to be visible when the user do not enter anything here, right? So let's for now just make sure this guy is also set to not visible. Okay, let's go back into our HTML. See, we'll be using simultaneously HTML and JavaScript, slowly one at a time. So this is our text box here, input type text box, and this is our validation little span tag here with the class. This class comes from Bootstrap. You guys have been coding for a while in HTML, and then that's so we don't want this to be visible also when we are in the first time in the page, right, without clicking that button and without. Okay, so I want to say data bind. So also we're going to use the existing built-in custom binding called visible, and we have add degree. I wish this one also had an intelligence. That would be cool. Oh. Okay, this is success. No, this is not for the. It's for the validation, right? So we're gonna say by default we are assuming is valid degree entered. So I'm gonna set it to false. This one too. Okay, what did I? Is valid degree entered. By default, I set it to false. If it is false, so it is not true. Alright, beam add degree is valid degree entered. If it is false, it means it's not entered, but if it is entered. Okay, I'm assuming it is enter is true. If it is true, we do. Okay. Alright, so if it is by default, it is set to true, but like if they do not enter and they click button right here, we will display the validation message. Okay, that is what we'll do. Of course, right now, the next thing we need to do is, of course, we need to have some sort of event handler here. Okay, so we're gonna define. Here is our button right here, and we're gonna use new data bind. We're gonna use let's define we're gonna use this built-in binding called click. So we're gonna use bm add let's say save degree. This sounds good. This looks good. So we're gonna say, alright, we're gonna define a method called save degree. So we're gonna go into our JavaScript here. Let's define a function called save degree. Maybe first thing I want to make sure, at least this is working. Let's write something into the console. I'm going to say console, the log. The information I'm going to write down here would be bm add degree, and just look at that property name, whatever the. So basically, what I'm saying is, hey view model. So basically, you have a property called name. That's what. Even though it's a property, but when we invoke, we have to call it as a function. Okay, it's very important. So basically, we are trying to retrieve the value of that text box and log that information into console. That is very important. If that is there, let's do one step at a time. Right now, if I do add degree, but it's this even though it's undefined, which is okay because now we can at least see that, as you can see right here, the number is changing. That means like our click event is wired up. It's ready to it's a firing, right? If I change something here, but however, remember, like the idea was like when we user clicks add degree, if they do not enter anything right here, they should have error right here, the validation message, which is also, we don't have return any code for that one too. Okay, and if I just type something, whatever, instead of this value coming in here, instead of being displayed here, it still says it's undefined. So we have issues going on. Okay, this is pretty easy. I know why it is not, because in our markup right here, we don't have any binding information here, right? This is our text box here, but we don't have any KnockoutJS related binding. So I'm going to go here, data bind, and so we're going to use another built-in binding called text value. The value for this one would be add degree, the name property that we define in our view model. If I type something here now and click add button, As you can see, the text that I entered is there now. Okay, one important thing that you might have noticed here. So here, when we use the property, we're using as if it were a property, but over here, because we're actually invoking that to find the value. But here we're just binding it. These are important. How this syntax here we are using as if it were a function, but here it's just as a property. Okay, those are these are subtle things, but you have to keep in mind while developing. And it's good to know why it is the way it is. Okay, now I think so. Now what we can do now we have this method here. So let's see. The next thing we're gonna do, if the user do not enter anything, we want to display our is valid degree enter information. We're gonna display our validation message. Hey, please enter something, right? So to do that, we can do something like this. If usually what I prefer to do is if I need some kind of private method, let's go ahead and write some private method here. I'm going to define a function here called is null or empty, and it takes a value. Usually, we can define a little library, as a utility, and because this function like this would be very useful. We can put it there. As for now, I'm just defining globally. So I'm going to say something like return value is null, empty value is if it's undefined, or value equals to null, or value equals to empty string. Or maybe last thing we can do is like value the length equals to 0. Right? So once that method is defined, we can do something like this. So we're going to say, alright, if bm is null or empty, bm add if the user, that means this piece of code is basically saying, hey, this property, the value is nothing, nothing is entered into that text box, we have a problem. So to avoid that problem, we're going to say, alright, so then we're going to do something like bm dot this is valid degree entered it's going to be is valid degree entered. By default it should be set to true, and then if this happens, it should be set to false. So here in our validation is valid degree enter equals to false. We're going to show this one. Okay, so I'm going to say, alright, please enter. Okay, can I read a property length of undefined? Why it is complaining? So value is undefined, or value is null, or value is empty string. Okay, pretty cool. So it is undefined. That's that. For the triple equal operator was giving some problems. So right now our validation, as soon as we click button, when we do not enter anything into our text box, this validation message, hey, please enter something. So if I do something like that, it should go away. But right now we don't have any code to tell it, hey, if the user enters something, it should go away. Let's go ahead and fix that one too. So if this happens, we don't want to go any further. We just return from there. Otherwise, see, like, we're making a progress because it's a basic video tutorial, so that's why I'm going very slowly, step by step, so that you understand what's going on. So right now, if that's the case, then basically we want to set it to true, right? Because we don't want that we don't want that to be visible. That error message to be visible if the user enters something. Right now, let's say user enters something, that is gone, and user do not enter anything right here. That message comes up. Okay, pretty cool. That is good so far. So if this happens, like, user enters something, that means we have a data that we can persist into our backend database. So if that is the case, usually, like, I don't like to, this is view model. View model shouldn't be deal with the data API, in this case the API that persists the data into backend database. So what I prefer to do is I define there it's one file, so that would be responsible for let's write something like this. Let's say data provider. Of course, this data provider object doesn't exist. We need to define, and let's say define API, and I'm going to say save degree. This is going to be only thing we really care about here is basically we need to know the endpoint. This is going to be the URL. Oops. Okay. We need to pass a couple of, invoke this save function here. This function will be taking the URL, okay? The endpoint into which we'll calling, and it's going to be the request type. For now, maybe to say a get request. I don't really even care this one. So we need to pass some data. In this case, stringify this object here, and then finally a callback function. It's going to be something like this. The API, we'll be creating API kind of like this, and this save degree would be calling the AJAX behind the scene to persist the data. Okay, I will be coding that code starting from the next video tutorial. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video and learning about KnockoutJS and other different kind of code. Sayonara until next videos.